welcome to the 2020 series presented by the New York Film Academy. The 2020 series are conversations with creative visionaries. We do 20 minutes of conversation about craft, about process, we geek out on that, and then we'll take 20 minutes of global questions. So please write in your questions. My name is Liz Hinlein. I am a creative director and filmmaker, and today I have an amazing award-winning producer, Gretchen McGowan. Hey, Gretchen.
Hi, Liz. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So you are head of production, which sounds super fancy. And I just want to understand as a filmmaker, who's the head of production? Is that the point person? Is that the person I need to say yes to when I go to a company to fund my project?
Well, let's see, at a company like Goldcrest, we'll give you the structure at Goldcrest and then I'll let you know how I fit in there. We're quite a small company. We're not a large studio, but we are kind of like a mini studio in a way. We have our own post-production, both in London and in New York. That's picture and sound finishing all the way through delivery. And then we've got our own, we have a library of titles. We have an international sales division. And we have production, which is me, and I oversee each of these projects. We do both documentaries and narrative features. So if somebody brings a project to us, I'm the one that kind of holds their hand through the entire process of the filmmaking. Always there to kind of back them up. And I'm, of course, there at the very beginning to ensure it's the right match for Goldcrest in the first place. So I'm really the first person that comes through with the readers that are working with me to make sure, like, be looking at titles and say, is that a Goldcrest title? But yeah, I'll take it. Unlike probably a lot of head of productions, I have a strong post-production background and I'm ending up delivering a lot of our projects. So I'm very nitty-gritty with each of the processes, the development, the casting stages, the actual production, the crewing up, the actual production, the post-production where we can get very involved, and the delivery.
And how do you know what is like a project that's a Goldcrest project? Is this something that it's your personal taste that involved, or is it there's a unifying taste of the company?
I would say, you know, because our library encompasses really evergreen titles like Gandhi and Room with a View, it really is the title that you hope to be making today that will be relevant in 20 years. And the title that you love, your kids love, and your mother loves. So that's pretty far reaching, but these are projects, a lot of them tend to be period pieces, but they needn't be. It's just that that's something that very easily does fit that model.
And how does this understanding post make you feel like a more confident, doable, able producer?
Right. That's interesting because one of my first jobs in the industry was as an assistant editor, and that was when we were working with celluloid. We were working with physical film. So you had to understand post-production when you were picking it up and holding it, looking through it, syncing the dailies. You really make a connection to it, and you have to understand what that means to take it to the mix physically, to deliver it to the mix. So for me, the post process it's very close to my heart for that reason, because that's where I got my start and that's where I found my mentors. But it's also really where the project is made. I think many films, they shoot and they kind of can lose their vision along the way, just getting it in the can. They get into the editing room, things settle down. They're amongst friends and trusted colleagues, and they put a cut together. They share it with their friends and family. It starts to take on a life of its own. This is a really exciting stage in the process of the filmmaking. And yet at the same time, everyone's thinking technology will expedite the process, will make a filmmaker be able to deliver a narrative feature instead of the 12, 16 weeks. They think, well, you've got technology on your side. You can deliver this surely in 9 to 10 weeks. And I really believe in protecting the filmmaker's solid chunk of time, that gestation period that it takes to make a movie. It goes through these iterations and it comes to life after a while. And there's this gestalt moment of, now we've got it.
And
So
how
I'd
do you
like to protect that.
exactly? And how do you know? Because with projects I've done or stuff like that, the longer you let it sit, something new percolates, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that before. So how do you know when it's done? Is it because it's a forced date and you have to put it out there, or is there's something with the essence of the project that just says, now I'm finished?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I think those screenings really help in that process, to know with a fresh audience that it is more than one degree of separation from the filmmaker, that it is a trusted audience and yet not a very closely connected audience to the filmmaker, that they can be honest in their feedback, because you will have lost a little bit of your perspective at that point. But also, those are the times when you can figure out if you need to go back, if you need to get some pickups, some inserts, if there's something that isn't quite working, if there is a strong ADR session that could bring you some creative solutions just by changing what in an over the shoulder shot or in a voiceover, what an actor is saying. It can change the shape. If an actor's good in the booth, it can really change the shape of that scene and the film for that reason.
I was looking through your bio, and you came up also through line producing and through production managing. And can you talk a little bit about how that informs you as a producer today, having done those roles?
Yeah, it helps me tremendously as head of production, having been in the nitty gritty. I would say when I first line produced, I did a film called Heavy, and we shot upstate Port Jervis. Everybody was working for no money. You rented out your room in the city and you went upstate, and we put this great crew together with this fantastic cast, and we all just like made it work. But it was trial by fire for me, and I didn't understand the accounting aspect of things, so I kept running away from it. It's a cost report meeting and I run away from it. And I realized after I made that film what my weak spots were. So I was able to come back, kind of have a little bit of a reset and delve into those weak spots a little bit and kind of poke holes in them and build those strengths up. I did some accounting work, and that led to more production management work because it was much more nitty gritty. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it was probably too early for me to line produce, but it was a great opportunity. How could I say no to it? And it was an opportunity to figure out really what I needed to do to become a complete producer. I wasn't a complete producer. And there are very few producers who do have all levels, have the sort of the creative aspects, the financial background, the post-production background, the casting. It's such a multifaceted position that how can you possibly be good at all these things? How can you be good at financing and closing a film with the bond company? It's almost like another job, isn't it, from what you do on set? So as many skills that you can build before getting into that true producing job, or at least not being too proud to step back and say, ooh, maybe I'm not so good at numbers, or maybe I could figure out my way around a grip house and figure out what those lights are in a G&E house, and like be able to talk the talk a little bit with my crew. What is it that I'm missing? So I've still got a lot of gaps, of course, we all do, but I tried to work on the ones that were going to help me become a better producer or head of production.
That's amazing. And for you, what are a couple of the things that are super satisfying about producing?
Well, I know I mentioned how much I love editorial. I think the other end of that, as I grow in this business, I really just the putting together the crew is really the largest and the most rewarding part of making a film, because especially when I'm head of production and we're doing 15 films over the course of 3 years, I can't possibly be on set all the time. I don't want to be on set all the time. I just need to build the team or help the producer and the director build the team that they trust, that I trust, that is going to deliver.
Mhm.
And of course, it's great when you know these people already, but you can't know everybody, so you can vet them. And I love the vetting process. I love talking to other filmmakers about their experience working with that sound mixer, their experience working with that DP, because you get them on the phone, they're going to tell an honest story about their experience. It's off the record, and you know the things to look out for and the things that are seamless about that person. So building the cast, of course, goes without saying. There's no movie without the cast. We'd be sitting around doing nothing without it, or we would be making animated films, and even then we need great ADR. But the crew's everything. And you build those heads of department, it trickles down from there. And that's the mood of the set, and that's the movie.
Mm-hmm. And it's so lovely, you know, especially having come from crew, to hear a producer say like the crew is everything, because it is all that momentum and goodwill and collaboration that also makes a movie go, not just the most brilliant script on the planet.
Yeah.
So, you know, to pivot to
Which
that,
is probably the other part of it.
to pivot to that, we had a really interesting conversation whenever we talked earlier about that it's getting a little more challenging because TV has gotten so muscular to find quality feature scripts, because the TV writers are going into, or the feature writers are going to TV. And I want, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of independent filmmakers, writer-directors get recruited to the television industry, and they're thriving in it, and they're making money, and it's just so exciting to see that. At the same time, you wish you could kind of pull them back in to do a couple features here and there, because yeah, the scripts are, I'd say the really good scripts are harder to come by. It used to be kind of, I feel like every 10th script I would read and that was already vetted was something that I would almost jump up and down for, and now it's fewer and further between that we're reading those scripts. I hope that they'll continue to be informed by their television career and take time to write, at least write, if not direct, features in the future, because, and especially now over this slow summer for all of us, that it's been a time for writers to take that script out of the drawer and tweak it and circulate it. And wouldn't that be exciting to have a year where we're across all the media?
And how are you finding your projects, if you like went more out of the box than just from the agents? How are they coming to you, or you're seeking them?
They come through various means, rarely through agencies. They're coming from relationships just with the past filmmakers I've worked with. Nick Quested, the co-owner of the company, has many relationships. Many of the scripts come through 1 or 2 degrees of separation from filmmakers he has worked with. So, you know, we're out there shaking the bushes because we're also an international sales agent, because we're a post facility. We know these filmmakers. They say, oh yeah, Goldcrest is financing, putting together projects. We should go to them the next time when they're in the house doing their grade. They think we should bring Goldcrest into the next project potentially, for if they're the right match for it.
And how are you seeing pitch packages differently? Is it more than the script now that you're being asked to look at, or that's trying to entice you to this project?
Definitely. I would say, you know, just 10 years ago, we wouldn't, in New York anyway, we wouldn't be looking at a script with a lookbook and all of that. We would just get the script. And that still works if we know you as a filmmaker, if we know your projects, and there's really probably no need to go into putting together a sizzle of some sort, using other people's work to put together what your film might look like in the end. So that's, I love it, and yet I want the script to speak for itself, but it's a great shorthand for me to then take it to Nick, to take it to David Kennedy, who I work with as well, and who who will say, oh, we like this, now we'll read the script. So it's a great kind of way in the door if we already know you, and it's a great way in the door if we don't already know you, because who doesn't have time to look at a lookbook, and who doesn't time to watch a sizzle down, and that's a 2-minute sizzle, and get excited about what that could be. I think those are great support materials to have. And yet if you asked me 10 years ago, I'd say, I don't want to look at it. So I've come a full 180 on those two elements.
Well, sometimes, but it's also, you guys are so sophisticated in your tastes and your understanding of filmmaking at Goldcrest. So it seemed to me some of those, like the pitch deck or stuff, it is for, say, producers or entities that really don't know, like don't have a vision. They can't quite read a script and see it. Do you think that?
Well, I mean, I feel like that's what they used to be. And now I feel like they've really become a tool, maybe even to communicate with the heads of department about, like, here's our palette, and we're really going for this kind of look from this film. So, and then when you talk about filmmakers, about their process in putting them together, they say they changed the script because they saw the direction the book was going in. And that's not to say they gave more stage directions or, heaven forbid, told us as an art director how to put together a room. It was more, it just shaped character. It took a different direction. I think that's really exciting because that's just doing work. We just happen to be peeking behind that door now and seeing what their work was done that came to this script.
Totally. And I'm really excited to hear, because you've done narrative and you've done documentary, and how you approach projects differently. We're talking about Restrepo, and we're talking about Carol and these projects that you're involved in. How do you even think about them differently when you start out these projects?
Let's see. They're completely different animals, right? They have a camera, a director, post-production. Those are the things they have in common. And some of the films that I made when I was at Mark Cuban's company and when I was working with Jason Cleo, Joanna Vicente, those were with Blow Up Pictures, almost like a combination between a documentary and a narrative because so few people were in the room. Are you talking about like what attracts us to the project or the process in putting it together?
I guess the process, I think I'm curious about, because it's storytelling, essentially, any project is a great story. Is there an inherent, do you put on a different cap when you're looking at a docu-style project as opposed to a pure narrative project?
Yeah, you do. I mean, I think about just the project we just made in Mexico, which was, we were shooting in very dangerous areas. The whole film was about insurance and protecting the crew. The whole film was, how do we get access to this location? How is everybody going to be safe? Am I even going to be able to get this insured? That's a project called Blood on the Wall for Nat Geo. We did get it insured. We had to be really careful. We had to present a plan for everything that we did very specifically before we would explore or even get a camera out to go, or even hire a crew member to go to a certain area. So much planning, not necessarily what you think of when you think about a documentary. You think just pull the camera out of the case, get a couple lights up and shoot. Well, that's what we were doing in New York when we were filming The Experts and getting them on camera for those sit-down interviews. But in the field, it was very exciting and very timely, and a thrilling documentary to make. But it was challenging from that perspective, which isn't the challenge that I had anticipated. I think with docs, it's always just that. It's the challenge you didn't know was coming. Everyone is different. When you make the narratives, you sort of know the shape that it's going to take. Now, there are different locations, and when we were filming in Jordan, we had totally different challenges than we do in New York or LA. But we kind of know, you got to ramp up, you got to have your crew by here, you got to have your equipment, your costumes, you got to get everything going. And if it doesn't get here by here, you're going to have to push your start date and rethink and go into your contingency, whatever it is. So sometimes I'm working on a narrative feature, while I'm working on a documentary, and some craziness will be going on with the documentary. And on set of the narrative, they're like, oh, the generator's an hour late. What are we going to do? Well, it's like, that's nothing. That's nothing. We're going to get through this. So you're informed a little bit by the challenges of the other project to remain calm and find solutions with the other project.
That's funny. That's funny. You don't have to account for hazard pay on your,
Yes.
on your sit down interview.
No, not there. Not
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. I'm just going to go, there's a bunch of questions, but there was a question, I'm going to paraphrase it, is what are the qualities that you look for in a producer, or that a producer should cultivate in them to do their job well?
Well, you know, it's funny. I was thinking about this when we were talking about the scripts and the good projects that come to us, because often good producers attract great material. They just have an eye for it. They're at all the markets. They know what's going on. So a good producer, of course, will have in their arsenal at least a film or two that they have completed, that they've delivered, that they were there for every stage of the process. They didn't leave once, you know, delivery. It was time to deliver the movie. They were there soup to nuts, and they owned it soup to nuts. That's very important to me, because I'm the one left holding the bag if they're not there. But it's about the producers who have perennial relationships with directors. They have, you know, probably a group of one, even if it's just one director they work with all the time, they just trust one another. That trust is incredibly important to me, because they'll attract those scripts and they will know how to work to get a project cast and really get it greenlit. We won't be in development for forever with a producer like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, you know, from the list of films that you've worked with like a lot of iconic and iconoclast directors. And do you find, I guess what excites you about that, some different visionaries, and you have to sort of sometimes bend yourself to fit into their world?
Yeah, definitely, because of the different style in which they like to work. And certain directors, you know, I remember doing a breakdown of a script, the first to present to a director, and he didn't want to look at it. It was like, I just took his beautiful script and I destroyed it and turned it into a movie magic scheduling document. What could be so awful? So that was, and I was used to sitting there and going through scene by scene about, did I cover this correctly? Is that enough time to address that particular scene? Didn't want to go there. And yet the next really high profile director I'm working with wants very much to explore that, and to like, no, of course I want to go through it line by line and explore that. So you get to know what those sensitivities are, what's important to them, what just goes without saying, you know, and who wants to be there at absolutely every location scout and who wants to back off from that. I think to some extent, yes, I'm definitely informed by my work with each of those directors and their different styles. And sometimes I'm surprised when a new director doesn't, you know, show us that certain kind of style. But I love that it takes all kinds. It's just, if they have the vision and they have the ability to bring the right cast and crew together, if they have the patience to cut that movie, to spend the time they need on the script and in the editing room, then don't care what your name is.
Exactly, exactly. We have a question from Jason Blum. Are you seeing certain genres rising up over others, such as less police, more race related?
I haven't yet, but of course we're going to. I think we can all anticipate seeing a real sea change in the kind of material that's percolating right now. So, you know, I just got 4 scripts in the beginning of this week, and I'm just beginning to peek behind the cover and see what is all this about. So I would be thrilled if we did see some very timely material that we'd want to shoot quickly to make it relevant.
Joseph asks, from the beginning, how did you develop your craft, and where are you headed?
Where am I headed? Let's see, the first part is easy. The first part's easy. So yeah, I kind of fell into it. I went to college at Kenyon College in Ohio, very small liberal arts school, and they had a wonderful theater program, and I was a theater major. I came out fully expecting to be, you know, Joseph Papp, and or at least, and I did get to meet Joseph Papp, but I wanted to become a theater producer. It became impossible to make a living in the theater as a newbie, you know, who was production. We're used to doing stage management and hanging lights from the catwalk. So I fell into a job from the back of the Village Voice. I was an office manager for people who made documentaries, and I got to kind of pull focus when they were doing shoots, and I would put the crew together on the phone, and I was syncing dailies at night and recording my own ADR. It was one of those kind of dream jobs, but making very strange movies. So that was the beginning that got me into working with Toby Shimon as an assistant editor, who's one of my mentors, and worked with her on a few projects and did some sound editorial. Love that end of it, but then sort of got a hunger to be on set a little bit more and worked my way into more researching and associate producing, but always kept my heart in post-production. So the job at Goldcrest with post as such a large element of it is very dear to my heart, and just a thrill to be at a production house that has that giant asset there. It's incredible, because when I think about the times we're at a low budget shoot and we need to go in and we need to reshoot and we need to recut it and we need to reconform, it was just this giant undertaking. And here, that's something I don't need to lose sleep over it. I know that we've got a team that will take care of us and get this thing delivered. Where am I headed? I'd like to do more. I just love working on these kinds of projects. We want to do narrative television. I have 2 of those scripts that came in are in fact television pilots that I'm excited about reading. They did start, Liz, with a lookbook that I was intrigued by, so requested the script. So that's where I think everybody's headed, and where Goldcrest should be headed too.
And you mentioned for a beat about mentors and mentorship, and you know, you are on the board at New York Women in Film. So just talk to me about mentors you've had or not had, and how do you like to be a mentor and stuff like that?
Yeah. I'm also with a company called Chief, and their belief at Chief is that it's a kind of more of a network than a company, I should say, but their belief is that you should be mentoring with your peers. You shouldn't just be the mentor of people who are necessarily younger than you. Of course, that's a giant part of it, but people who are going through a career change or a challenge at work, it's really important that your peers, people similar to what you're doing and at a similar level, also need mentoring. And that's kind of a novel thought. So I like that. But going back to original mentors, Toby was definitely a big one. I had done a film with St. Clair Bourne. He was a wonderful documentary filmmaker. I was syncing dailies for the making of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing at night in his studio over Popeyes in Midtown, in the Magno building. And he would be like, he couldn't wait to see what was coming in from set for fresh dailies. And he'd be hovering over me while I'm syncing the dailies, and I'm trying to not get too nervous. But I was so excited at the idea of working with him. And then I had, of course, I was a big fan of Jim Jarmusch's, so it was great to be able to work with him first on Coffee and Cigarettes, and then again with Stacy Smith when we went to Spain to make The Limits of Control. That was the dream job.
we have a question from your perspective. Do you think it's good for a director to produce as an experience, or it's a separate journey? And if you could talk a bit about, does that confuse too many things? We don't have enough time, but but I need to get the shot, you know, that type of thing.
Oh yeah, I've seen that happen. Definitely. I've seen coalitions work together pretty well, but it is, so a group, say, of 3 filmmakers working together, one of them directs a film, all 3 of them work to produce it, to get it financed, and they push and see it through, then rotate, it's the next person's turn to make her film, and they all 3 work together. So of course, on a low budget film, a director is a producer, there's no doubt about it. You're in it, you're in the thick of it, but you'd like to think that you have a support team that takes over, and you get to turn that side of yourself off and focus just on your cast and your heads of department once you begin filming, if not sooner. I don't think it gets in the way. I do think, to your point, Liz, is that it could confuse the issue a little bit, but I don't think it is such a bad thing for a director to be sensitive to what a producer is going through, and likewise for a producer to know what a director is really going through. That's probably more of the challenge.
Have you ever had to fire a director or producer off a film that you guys were doing?
No. No, or if I have, I blocked it out. I don't recall. And probably if that happened, they sidelined themselves. They just sort of took a back seat as a producer. Rarely am I working on a project where there's only one producer. It takes so many producers, as it takes so many financiers to put together even a very low budget movie. It takes many producers, but one person has to really be the creative producer.
And so then where does it, let's say in the casting, where's the buck stop as far as, let's say, maybe there's 2 actors for a main role? Who has final say so?
Well, that, that's going to be a contractual thing. Of course, if there's a creative tie break contractually with the producer's contract with their director, we at Goldcrest are always going to be able to, and they will always want to know who is faring the best on the international market. Now, that's not as meaningful as it was 10 or even 5 years ago, but it is meaningful still, if we're not an all right sale, to know who has value in the international market. It's awful to put a number to a human being, and yet sometimes that can be the thing that gets them another $200,000 to shoot the scene that they really want to shoot. And if either actor would be excellent in the role, maybe look to the one who can really deliver internationally.
But then you sort of sideline unknown actors, I guess, or finding that gem. If you're focused on their numbers and their likability or their name recognition, it's hard. How do you then bring on like the unknowns or the first timers or the?
Oh, and we do all the time. I mean, I think some of the favorite films that I worked on were cast by like the Susan Shopmakers of the world, who know how to find that unknown cast. She did a film called Series 7, and it had to be a cast that nobody recognized. The movie didn't work otherwise. A thriller or a horror film more often than not works better for me as an audience if I don't identify who that actor is. A little bit of separation there, and that's how they get their foot in the door for those roles. But certainly the supporting cast, if it's about talent, it's not about name.
And what are you thinking, or what are you hearing, what are people saying now that we're in the COVID and hopefully eventually post-COVID film world? What are you hearing from the eaves that people are talking about how this is all going to fall out for production? And
well, there's a lot of interest in commissioned documentaries, which is something we do at Goldcrest. And because they know we can deliver on a film like that, even in these circumstances. So we're out filming now we're doing small interviews. We're being very, very careful about, and just a tiny crew. And, you know, we work with the kind of DPs who can light the shot without the actor there, bring the speaker in and the subject in, and be able to film that or do some verite work like that. But it's the narrative world. I mean, I'm not ready to get back on set yet myself, so I don't expect anyone else to do it. But it's a great time for the projects we're working on to develop them, and people need to work. So I'm excited that these other crews are making it work, even just for short-term projects like commercials and whatnot. I'm just think we're still a ways away, as we are with schools, to being able to do the whole deal on set.
You think financing has been changed because of this, because of COVID?
I don't know yet. Certainly not from the networks, right? Because they've got the setup, they have the means to deliver, so they want the content now. And at a certain point, you know, that there isn't going to be that much more festival content to acquire. They will need to acquire in earlier and in the stages at which we're putting things together. I feel like many of the projects I'm seeing now that are more complicated films are saying, we're going to do this late 2021. So they're being realistic about the idea of a vaccine and getting financing together in time, casting it, and going later in 2021. That's more of what I'm seeing.
Interesting. And of all the many, many projects you've done, what are a few that are really just near and dear to you?
Gosh, well, the thing I loved about my 30s was going on location all the time. So sometimes I don't want to confuse the filmmaking with the film, and yet I really did enjoy the scouting and putting together projects in those early stages. I helped put together a film called 3 Seasons, but I didn't actually get to make the film. I went to Vietnam. I was in Ho Chi Minh City. I scouted. I put together a kind of exploratory location book of how to go about making a movie there, because nobody was making a movie in Vietnam at the time. Hollywood was doing like part of a Bond movie there, but otherwise nobody was filming. Nobody was shooting sync sound. So I love that challenge. I love the idea of going somewhere and doing something no one else has done before. Terrifies me, but that's what makes your heart beat. We made another movie in Costa Rica called The Citizen, which J.N. and I directed. It's a lovely film, but it just didn't get a lot of play at the time. And it was such a great place to make a movie. It's fun to be there. But I love being in New York too. I love filming in New York, filming in Buffalo on Buffalo 66, and filmed all over New York State. So that was a fun one.
That's exciting. I know. I mean, I think that's the part of the whole of being the filmmaker is having experiences in the world that you as an ordinary citizen would never have.
Yeah.
And now that you've been able to travel all over the world, and as we were talking now, the New York, what's so great is New York is really coming up with all the stages and being such an accessible place to film.
It is. Steiner's building a whole new stage now in Sunset Park, so it's very exciting times.
So, not to put you on the spot, but if people wanted to reach out to you, is there any way or that you would like them to connect with you?
Yeah, I think everything's on IMDb or even the Goldcrest website, the Goldcrest Post website too. But I like to get a pitch describing what the project is. Could this be right? Not to send the script in the first introductory email, but to make an introduction to yourself and what you're working on. It might just be that it's not the right match for what we're looking to do right now. I might have a suggestion about where you could take it. so that it's very easy to find me.
Well, Gretchen, you've been so generous. Thank you so, so much. We
Thank
are at
you.
our time. This has been so great. And thank you, New York Film Academy, for giving us this platform to meet amazing filmmakers like Gretchen. And yeah, so be safe, and thank you, everyone. It was a great experience. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.